Hi. Hi, if you just want to put your name, where you're from, and which language you teach in the chat, that would be lovely. And then we'll make a start in a couple of minutes. Hi, everyone. It's a lovely Sunday afternoon here. I don't know if it's the same for you, but please use the chat during the time before we start, just to let me know, where you're from, which languages you teach, if it's primary, secondary. Hi. So we've got people from Belgium, Portugal, here in England. That's fantastic. Hi, everyone. It's really nice to have you here. We'll just make a start in a couple of minutes. Hi, Joe. Hi, Glenn. Hi, Emily. Hi, everyone. I don't know if you've got the same weather as me, but here it's really, really nice. So for once, it's really nice in the north. Thank you to everyone who've put, where they're from in the chat. That's fantastic. Oh, someone from Greece as well. That's fantastic. So we've got some of you from primaries, over from secondaries. Someone from York. That's great. So I'm just sharing my screen now, so hopefully everyone can see that. Someone from Jersey, that's amazing. Okay, thank you for confirming that you can see my screen. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. All right, so please free to use, someone from Dubai as well. That's amazing. So feel free to use the chat for any comments. And if you've got some questions, can I please ask you to use the Q&A? So then it's just easier for me to monitor at the end of the session. But we'll just make a start. So thank you very much for being here in my session this afternoon. So my name is Jennifer Wozniak-Rush. I'm an assistant head teacher for teaching learning, and I teach French and Spanish in a school in East Lancashire. So Speak Now is the title of my session. As I said, for those who've just joined in, any questions, please put them in the Q&A. What I've done as well on my last slide of the presentation, I have put a QR code so you can have access to the presentation straight away. But here is my Twitter as well, if you want to contact me, or my email address. Okay, so let's make a start. So Speak Now. Well, we all know that a language is meant to be spoken, and we all want our students to be able to communicate and to feel confident to have a go at speaking in a different language. But speaking a different language is something most students admit to want it to be able to do. Yet, this is not always what happens in the classroom. And really, my session is going to explore how we, as teachers, can create the conditions for talk, and also to be able to offer specific tasks and ideas that work with all learners, so depending on the background. So what is spontaneous? So the first part of the session, we're going to look at interaction language, target language, and spontaneous talk. So first of all, what is spontaneous talk? Okay, so spontaneous talk is an unscripted interaction in which teachers do not know exactly what language the students will produce. So the speaker, student, or teacher only has something to say as a result of having heard or understood what has been said to him or her. Talk is therefore both listening and speaking, reception and production. And this talk may be learner initiated or in response to a teacher's question. It may be within an oral talk or part of everyday communication between tasks. However it occurs, it will be produced, not read, improvised, not rehearsed, and it will often have that element of struggle and the effort to communicate when linguistic resources are stretched. So that is all from Rachel Oakes. And when you think about it, well, is it not something that we all want as languages teachers? Don't we all want our students to be able to say what they want to say spontaneously? However, I am pretty sure that you would admit that to get to that, well, it's not going to happen overnight, okay? Although if it will be amazing, we know that's going to be, difficult. So let's just have a look at all the things that we can do. First of all, I just wanted to give you some questions for you to consider, okay? So I want you to think, who speaks the most target language in your lessons? Is it you? Is it your students? Is it nobody? That might be, that might be the case. Then I want you to think as well, are your learners reluctant to use the target language, or are they okay with it? Or do you see a difference? Your year 7 might be extremely keen, wanted to speak Spanish, wanted to speak French. Is it the same in year 9? So just have a look, have a think about your own practice. And then another question for you to consider is, do you provide enough opportunities for pupils to speak and interact? Because at the end of the day, that's our role as teachers. So those are really 3 questions that I want you to think about, because I think they are, they are key. So I want you to think as well about the difference between us as teachers when we speak and the students when they speak. So the student talk versus the teacher talk. And who speaks the most target language in your lessons? You or them, okay? And speaking skills can only be enhanced if students are given adequate opportunities to speak scenes. And I love that quote, because watching expert acrobats doesn't lead to the audience performing somersaults, even if they might be able to recognize one. And I think it's exactly the same in languages, okay? So it's thinking about, yes, you might say you use a lot of target language, but do you give opportunities for your students to do that? Is it something that you would be interested in doing? And I think it's thinking about starting from day 1. From day 1, it is crucial that pupils learn to produce new sounds as accurately as possible. So developing speaking goes hand in hand with listening. We know that, we're languages, teachers. But we can start by thinking of the initial range of language that teachers and learners need to master so that they can interact in the target language in order to manage normal classroom routines or normal activities or different situations and so on. And if you have, if you have some students who are reluctant to speak in the, in the target language, or if it could be that they might be afraid of making a mistake, then the language is not sufficiently, practiced or scaffolded or rewarded, or that the topic language on the study does not motivate the students to communicate. So it's thinking about all those, all those things. But before we move on, I just need to clarify that I'm not saying that we should or we should not only speak in the target language. That is not what I'm trying to say. I'm only going to share some ideas of what can be done to encourage our students to speak as much as possible. Okay, that's just my aim for for this session. It might work, for you, might not, or you might just adapt some ideas that you think, oh, I quite like that, and I think that could be successful. So the first thing that I do is that I start every single with every single of my classes. I always start with a speaking activity. So I begin with a brief, low pressure speaking activity every day. And as the students become, used to that ritual, if you want, they will feel more comfortable with the expectation of speaking every day, even if it's short and even if it's low risk. I absolutely love it. My year 7 Spanish class, when they see me in the corridor, they would never, ever say hello to me. They always say, hola, señora, always, always, always. But that's what we want. And yes, it's tiny, it's just a tiny little thing. But the more we reinforce that, the better it will be. The more confident, they will be, as well as, I wanted to, to say something. So in my classroom, I tried to create as many opportunities so people speak and ask in the target language, and so they can build their confidence in speaking. So I teach pupils all the interaction language that they need. And actually, we have put that on our schemes of work. So on our schemes of work, everyone in the department will teach some interaction language. So all our students will know how to ask for a pen, how to ask for a paper, if they want to be a volunteer, if they want to go to the toilet, or if they want to speak in English, because sometimes they will need to speak in English, which is absolutely fine. But we teach them that so that if then one day they come without a pen, they cannot say to me, Miss, can I have a pen? They'll have to ask me in French or in, or in Spanish. So that's why we've put it on our schemes of work to do like, from the beginning, just to create those opportunities to make sure that, it's consistent. And I think when you look at the second point, the second bullet point where it says consistency, I think this is really key. Because consistency is key. So if you expect the students to say certain things in the target language, so don't let them, use English. If in one lesson you expect them to say that, in French or in Spanish, then it has to happen in every single lesson. Otherwise, the students don't know. Or one lesson it's okay to do it in English, and one lesson it's not. So it's really important that you think about, your own practice. And obviously, it needs to be built up by us. And we have to create opportunities for students to speak and make them realize that they can do it in the target language, that it is possible to do it. So surrounding the students with the sounds of the target language as much as possible works for my classes. So I will use gestures quite a lot. So I use a lot of actions or visual aids, or when just I say, à la fin du cahier, I take an exercise book from a student and I show them. So I say it in French or in Spanish, but it's there, they can see it as well. So even if they've not understood some of the words, they show, and they all do it. And then after a while, I won't need to do the actions. I won't need to show them because they will know exactly what I mean. But what we need to think about, it's like growing, their confidence in their own communication skills. Also, to ensure that they speak as much as possible, thinking about creating a lot of opportunities for pair work and group work so everyone can speak. Because my classes at Key Stage 3, they are usually between, so Key Stage 3, if you are abroad, sorry, I should have said before, it's usually your students who are like 11, 12, 13 years old. So obviously we've got a class of 30, 32. Some of our students, will feel a bit mortified to put their hand up and say something in a different language. So creating a pair work and group work activities is just ensuring that every single kid in your lesson got plenty of opportunities to speak and to say things. And because you go around the classroom, then you can easily, check what is being said or not. But you also need to be ready to get interrupted regularly. But in the long term, it's so worth it. So at the moment, in my year 7 lesson, my year 7 Spanish class, I'm being interrupting like every 10, maybe not 10 seconds. I'm a bit, exaggerating, but very, very regularly. But it's okay because they needed something. And in the long term, it will be so much, it will be worth it. I know it. Okay. So what do I do? So here are some ideas of things that I do that are very low prep and that anyone can do. So as soon as the students come into the room, I make them speak. So to put them in the French or Spanish mode. So for example, when they come in, I'm greeting them at the door and I have a topic, an opinion, a connective on the board. So on my mini whiteboard, so I'm at the door, I'm greeting them, bonjour or hola. And on my whiteboard, I might have put just opinion. And as they come in, they all need to give me an opinion in either French or Spanish. Or like, for example, if you look at my year 7, so you're 11 years old, or if you are teaching primary, it could be like, for example, just give me a number in French or in Spanish. Or it could be just a word. Give me a word in French or in Spanish. It could be absolutely anything. But again, it's just putting them in the habit of saying something in the target language as soon as they come in. Obviously, I have to speak about phonics. If we want our students to speak as much as possible, we need to do some work on phonics. And now, if you are in the UK with obviously the new GCSE that's coming up, or if you look at the Ofsted MFL research review, we know that phonics is so important. Don't get me wrong, we've always done phonics. You know, when your students said something, you know, in the language and didn't say something right, we've always corrected them, okay? But it's just thinking here about the progression, thinking about, you know, how you're going to introduce that in your lessons. And students will be more confident at speaking in the target language if they have a secure grasp of the sound and the writing relationship, and especially, you know, in French. So if I put my any of my Key Stage 3 classes on the spot and I say, okay, so I know that Joe is in the room, so I'm going to use Joe as an example. So if I say, Joe, how do you say he is funny? Okay, Joe will say il est amusant without a problem, okay, because it's something that we know. If now, instead of me saying to Joe, how do you say he's funny? But if I've put on my board, il est amusant, and I ask someone to read it, I will have some of my students saying il est. Have I ever said that in my lesson? Believe me, no. However, it's because our students don't automatically, systematically make the link between the sound and the written word. So when we do work on phonics, it is key that we build that link between the sound and the writing so that students then can say the words correctly, okay? And as well, the students will be more confident at speaking in target language if there's a secure grasp of the sound-writing relationship, which makes perfect sense. Something else that is really key is to think about the questions, okay? Because they want to ask questions, so they need all those question words. I have put a link to one of Rachel Oak's videos that she's put about how to ask question words, you know, in Spanish. But just in a nutshell, when it comes to questions, it's like thinking about students can initiate in the classroom as soon as they know the individual question words. So teach them with gestures, you know, so all your, you know, qui, quoi, que, you know, all those things, just make sure that you teach them and spend time using them. But as I said, there's that video on YouTube with an example in Spanish. Something else that I do, it is compulsory and it is part of, you know, safeguarding policy that we have to do a register every single lesson. So like, for example, even if you're in primary, you know, I did teach primary for 9 years. I had 3 hours of primary on my timetable. So I was a secondary teacher, but I was going to do some French lesson 3 hours a week for 9 years. And if I used to go in the morning, they would say to the teacher, good morning, Mrs. Such and such, good morning. And you had like 32, good morning, you know. And in the afternoon, it was, good morning, Mrs. You know, such and such, and 30 students doing that. So it's actually thinking about the register. How can you make sure that, obviously we have to do the register, but how can we make our students say something in French or in English? So like, for example, when I do the register, I might just say to them, I just want you to give me a word in French or in Spanish. I want you to give me a word from the topic of such and such. Or I want you to give me an opinion. Or I want you to give me a verb in the past or present or future tense. Or I want you to give me a word with 3 syllables. Or I want you to give me a word that starts with either, and you give them some letters. Or give me a word that starts with the last letter of the previous word that has been said. Or recently in year 7s, because we've done all the numbers, when I do the register, they just start from a certain number and then they have to, you know, the next person has to add 1 every single time. So just very easy ones to do, but it works really well. And again, they start speaking in, in the language. With Key Stage 4, so if you don't know what Key Stage 4 is, it's usually your older students, so those who are about 14, 15, 16 years old. What you could also ask the students to do is to tell you a story. So when you start the register, the first person on your register will give you a sentence, okay, a sentence in French or in Spanish. The person after needs to add something to it. The one after needs to add something else. So like, for example, recently, I've done it with my year 11, and I said, I want us to speak in the past. So the first person said, I think, le week-end dernier, je suis allée au cinéma. So last weekend, I went to the cinema. The person after said, avec ma famille. Then the person after said, j'ai regardé un film. Then the one after, I think, said, qui s'appelle, whatever. But that's the idea. So obviously, over time, you can build on it, and you can increase as well your level of difficulty, from year 7 to year 11. So it's not like boring because we change, but it's, again, just making sure that they keep practicing, the language all the time. So interaction language needs teaching. So introducing key structures and encouraging students to use and reuse them, often. So I use routines to encourage, the students to speak. So for example, in all my lessons, we'll do the greetings routine. All my classes will say, comment ça va, or como estás, okay, depending on the language that, I teach. And I just want to show you about how I extend it so that the language becomes more complex all the time, okay? So here we'll just start with, how are you, okay, comment ça va? So first, in year 7, I will start with comment ça va? Ça va très bien, ça va comme ci, comme ça, ça ne va pas. Okay? So I will introduce it like I introduce any kind of language. We will do lots of pair work activities and so on. And it's something that then we will do at the beginning of each lesson. Comment ça va? Okay? When they're really confident with that, what am I doing? I'm adding a reason for it. Okay? So why are you really well? Why are you not well? Why are you okay? And so on, okay? Then after that, when they start to be confident with that, I start hiding some of the words. So there's still some visual support, but I'm still trying to get rid of some of the words. And also, I'm sure you've seen in the middle, I've also added some connectives, okay? So as you can see already, there's a bit of a progression. Then what I do when they're really confident with that, so usually we get to that by the end of, by year 7. And by the end of year 7, they can do I just have comment ça va, pourquoi, parce que, and nothing else on the slide. And they can say all those things. Then in year 8, we carry on with that, but we also, because we've started using the past tense, we also reuse the past tense within our greetings. So if I've got my lessons period 1 and period 2, they will tell me things that they've done in the morning, either what they had for breakfast or if they slept well and so on. If my lessons are period 3 and period 4, so it's just after break, I've got on my slide saying, à la récré, so at break time, I spoke with my friends, I played football, some of the things, I went to the library, some of the things that they would have done during their break time. And if I've got them period 5, so it's after their lunchtime, then the thing in the past tense will be au déjeuner and all the things that they might have done. So again, we've taught the past tense within the topic content language, but we're also reusing it with our routines, which means that in every single lesson, we are reusing those, that specific tense, okay? Then to add some complexity, people then, sometimes I don't always ask them, me saying to them, comment ça va Joe, comment ça va Anna, comment ça va Lauren, and so on. Sometimes I just want them to do it with the person next to them. So they'll just say, oh, comment ça va, and so on. But then to bring some complexity, then I will ask each other how they're doing, and then ask them to tell me how their partner are. So then obviously they will need to change the I, the subject pronoun I, into he or she. So here again, we start, manipulating the grammar, a bit more. So it's making it more complicated, and also practicing the grammar that we know is so important. Here, it's adding, more connective, and also sentences that the pupils want to say. So here where I am, usually the students are massive fan of Manchester United or Manchester City or Liverpool. So if I know, my husband is a massive fan of Manchester United, so I always know the score. So I might as well incorporate that into my routines, because I know it's what my year 9 boys want to say. So because they want to say, I'm going to help them to say, but then because we've done it so many times, then they can just, say all those sentences spontaneously, after a while. And again, another example where you just build on, all the knowledge that you can, or on one hand, on the other hand, and so on. So it's just to show you, obviously how you can extend your routines, all the time. Obviously, increasing the number of opportunities for students to speak in pairs and in groups is also key. So identifying key phrases that you will always use when addressing, the students in the target language is important. In my class, because we do so many pair work activities, after a pair work, I always ask my students how their partner was. And the purpose is really to use the target language, and also pupils always have something to say, and they like actually commenting on each other. So again, here, I just want to show you some example of how I introduce the routine and how I build on it all the time. So in year 7, French and Spanish, I will say, after they've done a pair work activity, how was your partner? So they will say, I think that my partner was fantastic, excellent, very good, good, okay, bad, very bad, okay? And we'll just practice that. But they absolutely love it. And it's not done in a mean way. But they like saying, oh, my partner was amazing, or my partner actually was bad, or my partner, and they really wanted to, to say those things. So we start in year 7 with that. Then what we do, when it comes in year 7, when I've taught them the topic of personality. So when it comes to the topic of personality, you will introduce words such as like intelligent, fun, shy, chatty, lazy, all those things. So because we've done it with the content language, I also try to incorporate it within my routines. So then as well, to help with retention of the words, reusing it all the time, they're more likely to remember it. So here the students will say, well, my partner was, fantastic, very good, okay, bad, and they will give a reason for it. So either my partner is intelligent or my partner is cool, it was clear, it was not clear, okay? So very easy. Then I start hiding, some of the opinions, because they know them really, really well. So why am I going to leave it there and not bring a bit more challenge for them? And then I'm going to use more language. So here I'm starting to introduce the negative, because we've started to look at the negative. So why not using it here as well? Again, here, I start using, sentences that are a lot more complex. So all the answers were correct, or all the answers were not correct. And here again, if you think about my slides about phonics, here is key as well, because it's going to be a perfect practice if they can remember the rule when it's a silent final consonant, okay? Because I will not let them say toots, lis, or whatever they might say, okay? So again, it's really, really good practice, for me. And again, adding, more work, starting hiding more words, and so on. Then, when it comes to end of year 9, key stage 4, there's absolutely loads of reasons that they can use. As well, in year 10, We also use some reflexive verbs because it's something that we've covered, and so on. But it's just, again, we've seen the reflexive verbs in a specific context, in a specific topic, but you're not going to recap the reflexive verbs all the time because they only happen in certain topics. So therefore, having it in every single of my lessons, because in every single of my lessons, we do a pair work activity, and then I'm having my students saying, how was the pair work? Then that would work, really, really well. And again, and so on. Then again, at Key Stage 4, when we do the topic of family, friends, and relationship, then the students, they know how to say, I get on well with, I argue with. So they use that as well, part of their routine. Then again, when we've done some work on, comparative, superlative, and so on, it's something that you can add, okay, and so on. And then it comes to the point where you just have that slide because they don't need any support anymore. Even your low priority, they can do it because it's something that is being repeated every single lesson. And also because we're building on from year 7, in my year 11, don't get me wrong, some of my students are not capable of saying all those sentences. However, they can all give me a reason why their partner was really good or not good. And then you know your students better than anyone else. So you know as well if they're capable of saying a bit more, and therefore you can ask them or e, and so on. So as I mentioned, I plan for a lot of pair work activities in my lesson. So for example, the ping pong activities, so the table tennis activities. So here it's the students, bat words backwards and forwards to each other. Like as if you were playing, a table tennis, and you can use it to revise sequence of words or to revise vocabulary covered, in the previous lesson. So you can use it for a lot of different reasons. The language auction or the talking auction. So in pairs, the students exchange as many words as they can on a topic. And you ask which pair can recall the greatest number of words. So who have 5 words, who have 6 words, 10 words. And before challenging the pair who claim to remember the most, so ask all of them, before, you ask the pair who's got the most to give you, the list. But some people like to talk more than others. So it's really key to monitor the pairs and the group interaction and gently intervene when it seems that one person may be dominating the conversation. And, there's an awful lot of pair work that can be done as well. So like, for example, every time that I introduce some words, so let's say that I've introduced, 6 new words to my class, we've done a lot of repetition, a lot of drilling, then I will do a lot of pair work to practice those words. So I might have a mumble activity, so where one student mumble a word and the other one has to guess in French or in Spanish, or telepathy, so I'm going to, and they like a bit when you see that as well. So I do it with sounds. I do like ding, and as soon as I do the ding, believe me, I've got like 32 hands up because they all want to give me, to try to think about the words I'm thinking of. Or you can do actions, or lips reading. There's absolutely loads. But I think it's important to start with, giving support. Giving support is key. So make sure that you plan and you give the pupils the language that they need to be able to communicate in the target language. So teaching structures for students to use the language during lessons activity is vital too, including vocabulary to interact with each other. So, tell them how to say, it's your turn, you are cheating, I do not understand. And when you hear students using this language, then praise them. I make a big deal, like a massive deal. As soon as I hear someone saying, tu triches, I just say, and I put name on the board with loads of ticks. So then what do the others want to do? They want to use that because they want me to hear it, because they want to get the praise. And it's important to make speaking the target language fun and worth doing it. And similarly, at the same time, we need to structure and plan speaking tasks highly linked to listening. So in our classroom experience, as much as possible, include that spontaneity element. So when doing this, think small, okay? Because less is normally more. So you might want to use some knowledge organizer or vocab list, or if you use sentence builders to help and support, your students. Or for example, if you play some games of snakes and ladders, then again, put some words that they might need on the board so they can refer to it, because usually, like my classes know how to say it's correct, it's not correct, but do they know to say it's nearly correct? When they've just missed like a tiny little things. So little things like that, will help them. Also, to support pupils, you might want to have some displays on your wall. So I know there's like big debates about displays in the classroom. Are displays really useful or not? I think it's like everything. I think it depends the purpose of your display. If your display are just here to make your classroom look nice, then yes, they are not useful, okay? However, if it's something that you're going to rely on, something that you're going to point to, something that if the student says something to you in English, but it's there on your display, but you're just going to point, you don't give them the answer, you just point at it, and the student say it, then I think display's got its place. However, we also need to be careful about what display we're going to use and how much are we going to give to our students. So I've got some displays about, if they can, can I do something, just as a reminder. And I also got displays, for grammar. Okay, so what I personally find difficult is that now that I'm part of the senior leadership team, I'm not always in the same classroom. So sometimes when I teach in maths, I do not have my displays. So that's why then I rely on like knowledge organizers or vocab list or things like that. Or at the beginning of all their exercise book, all my students got that interaction language written. So even if it's a lesson where we don't use the exercise book, they've got it open on that side, so I can always refer to it if I'm not in the languages classroom. So to encourage pupils to speak, there are also some activities that you can plan. So here is about prediction. So I watched a webinar a few years ago from Greg Horton talking about group talk, and since then I use quite a lot of his ideas. So for example, on the slide, you can have like different different people, different celebrities, and you will ask students how they to predict about about that person. Or here, for example, you've got that picture and the sentence "Je fais du sport." So you might just want them to build on it. So by saying où, quand, avec qui, pourquoi, depuis combien de temps, ton opinion. So again, that sentence "Je fais du sport" can be, extended so much by just prompting the students with some of the questions. So here with the prediction as well, you might have some interaction language on the side so pupils can agree or disagree. And recently I've done a prediction task and I had celebrities on one side of the PowerPoint, and on the other side I had their pets, and pupils had to predict which pets belonged to whom. And again, it was just, the aim was just to make the students speak and say things in the target language. Pictures and authentic text can be a powerful, stimulus for a spontaneous talk in the foreign language classroom. And here is another activity with the Chindogu. And yeah, I know they are really funny. I can see your little smiley faces. They are very, very funny. But actually, the kids will absolutely love it. So here, and again, that's an idea that I've seen from Greg Horton, but since then, I am using all the time. So you show your students images of those Chindogu. I'm not even sure that you say that's how you say it, but you know what I mean. And here, for example, on the slides, and actually there's loads on it. If you just go on the internet and do like a simple search, you will find tons. And you project this onto your whiteboard and you tell them to work in pairs to rank the inventions according to what they like the most or what they like the least in a Diamond 9 activity. So they should be encouraged to use the target language exclusively when discussing this. And if they don't know the French, the German, the Spanish for a particular word, encourage them to ask each other in the language. So like, how do you say such and such? So comment dit-on, comment se dit, or was ist, whatever language, you teach. So encourage them to use the target language as much as possible, either by and making sure that you award, them with some points. Okay. Again, it's a really good activity to do. But create as well opportunities in your classroom. So, like for example, I use the team competition in my class. So every time that students, contribute and say something good, I will give a point for their team. So I split my class in two. I've got, my team croissant, my team pain au chocolat, or in Spanish, I've got my team Madrid and my team Barcelona, and I give them points. However, I might on purpose give a point to the wrong team. Obviously, the class thinks that I've made a genuinely mistake, okay? And I've not done it on purpose, when actually I have done it on purpose. So straight away, because they are on it, you better not give a point to the wrong team. So straight away, they want to produce spoken language in response to an immediate communicative need, and that can be very powerful. And actually, that will move the learners on their language learning. And the desire to speak out creates a pressure to communicate, because here they want to say to me that I put a point on, on the wrong team. And you will see, it's fascinating. They will work together as a team to tell me what I know exactly what they want to say. And I'm not saying that I'm enjoying making them struggle, because no, it's good struggle if you know what I mean. But they're really working together to try to tell me that I've made, a mistake. Sometimes as well, pupils, will start saying something in the target language, and then they will stop because they don't know a specific word that they need or a specific verb. So as a class, you can help them work it out for themselves, or sometimes you have to give them like the word depending on the context. But sometimes, I will ask, the class, and trying to, to guide them. But I also strongly believe that our pupils can get a real sense of achievement and confidence from having produced language on their own initiative and having said something that they want to say, because it's them that wanted to say that. So I just wanted to share some ideas of speaking activities that work quite well. This is an idea that I saw from Rachel Walks, now, probably like 6-7 years ago. And it's the same template that I use all the time. And you put a sentence in the middle of the slide. So here it's je fais de l'équitation. So I do horse riding if you don't do any French. And what the students have to do, they have to ask me a question about that. They have to give me an explanation about that. They have to give me a positive opinion. They have to give me a negative opinion about it. Then they have to put that sentence in the future tense, and then they have to put that sentence in the past tense. So again, it's just easy activity, to do. Here again, it's a simple activity. I do it with my Key Stage 4. I put some questions on the board, and we will roll a dice. It will be, like for example, number 4. So we've got 30 seconds to speak to me about, do you like music? And obviously we'll build, don't put a minute straight away, because it's really hard to speak for a full minute in a different language. So start with only like 10 seconds. Then when they're really confident, like 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and so on. Here, same activity that I do with my Key Stage 4. I just, put like random questions, and, I just, what would you say? What would you say to me in the target language? This activity, so this would be cut up into individual cards for short speaking line activities, and your students ask and answer the questions and then move on to the next person. So finally they can answer all for themselves, and then you can use like things like bon accent, sans ça, superbe, and so on. Here, this other activity that is really easy, they just roll the dice. So I'll do that at key stage 4. So you've got a different topic for each number. They roll the dice. They, so I don't know if they roll, it's 5. So they need to give me a sentence about the topic of a holiday. Then the next person will roll the dice. It's a 2. So they need to give me a sentence about the sports. And again, depending on your students, you might want to extend it. So you might say, well, what else, et, or pourquoi, or avec qui, or où, and so on. Here again, very easy activity. They need to tell me a story. So we spin the wheel, and they need to tell me a story using all those words from the wheels. Speed dating, I've done that recently with my year 7 in Spanish. So they go around the room and they just say, hola, ¿cómo estás? Estoy bien, ¿cómo te llamas? Me llamo, whatever, and so on. But that works really well. And just by giving them the beginning of each word, just to help your low prior retainers, but also, it's not too easy for them by not giving them everything. Stand up again activity. So here you might split your class into 2 teams, and on each team, every pupil gets a card with an answer written on it. So obviously your team A will have exactly the same cards as team B. So like, for example, if someone's got a card that says, je suis allé, I went, there's someone on the other team who will have the same card. So then as a teacher, you ask a question. So like, for example, I might say, comment dit-on I went? And it's the students with je suis allé who need to stand up, say it, and it's the person who said it first that will get, a point for their team. Another easy activity that you could do, you give a topic to a class and you ask, or you ask them a question, and they need to give you an answer with a certain amount of words. Another example here where you just give them, beginning of, one person will give you a beginning of a sentence, and then we need to add, so many different words. 60 seconds, so the students will have 60 sentences to list as many words, sentences, verbs, opinions, whatever you want from the current topic. Variation is a really good one as well. So give pupils a sentence and ask them to come up with as many variations as possible. So here, je joue au tennis avec ma sœur. So I play tennis with my sister. They can say, je joue au rugby avec mon frère. So I play rugby with my brother. Or je joue au tennis avec mes copains, or whatever. So how many variations can you think of? And again, it's just making the students think about all the words that they know, and then they can reuse. Okay, then you give students one word and ask them to come up with as many sentences as possible with that word. Here, the trapdoor activity, it's a very easy one, but it's built up to spontaneous speaking. So you can only use, so obviously that, you know how to do the trapdoor activity. So every, so I will pick, either option 1, 2, or 3 for every single one of them. The students, so let's say that, Helen will start. She will say, hola, me llamo, I don't know, David. If it's correct, we will carry on. If it's not correct, I'm going to ask someone else in the class. And they will start every time they get something wrong, they have to start from the beginning. So it's like a reading activity, and every time they got one wrong, they start at the beginning. So I always do it as a class activity, and then I make them do it in pairs. So again, they can practice. But that can be linked with spontaneous speaking, and obviously by just having like beginning of sentences, and then they have to just give you like a short text if you want, just using that. Here, this activity really easy as well. So I use buzzers. So in groups as well. So I put the first letter of each word, and then you tell me what it is. So the first one is je vais écouter de la musique. I'm going to listen to music. So it's the first letter of each word. But as you can see, as it goes on, it becomes more complex. So the last one is, oh, now I need to remember. Oh, après avoir regardé la télé, je suis allée au lit parce que je voulais jouer avec mon iPad. So after having watched TV, I went to bed because I wanted to play with my iPad. So there's quite some complex structures as well. They're working in pairs and it's just an easy activity to do. Doing individual oral practice, Bokeru is a fantastic activity. If you've been to the show and tell on Friday, this is an activity that I shared. But as homework, the students will record answering a question on a specific topic, and then they need to submit it on Teams if you use Teams, or it can be on tablet, on a Padlet, anything that you want. But you can also use Bokeru to give personalized verbal feedback. I've just to finish, I'm sorry, I ran over a bit, but I have put some reading about, interaction language, routines, and so on. So there's like fantastic here blogs, resources that you might want to look at to learn a bit more. If you've got any questions, please put them in the Q&A. But thank you very much for coming to my session this afternoon. I hope it was useful. And please be in touch. I have put here, there's a QR code that will take you to my Google Drive so you can download the presentation so you can have it straight away. But if you can't access it, please message me either on Twitter or contact me by email. But thank you so much, everyone, for coming this afternoon. Enjoy the rest of the weekend and hope to see you soon. Thank you for all the lovely comments. You're very welcome. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much, Helen. Thank you, everyone.